Electric vehicles such as electric bikes are becoming more and more popular, but is it viable to charge electric vehicles from solar power? Everyone knows what solar panels are, but what I want to do is build a small-scale solar panel setup that will be useful for charging my electric bike, as well as possibly powering other appliances inside of my work shed. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. So I have no prior experience with solar panel setups other than this solar panel on my calculator, but I have a rough understanding of basic electronics. And I've done a bit of research and found that there are many different solar options being sold on Amazon. The most common options being these 12 volt 100 watt panels for around £80. Now I'll also require a solar charge controller to allow the solar panel to charge a large battery for storing the energy for when I'm not using it to charge my electric bike. And I think what I'm going to do is order a slightly overkill charge controller in case I want to expand to use more panels in the future. So let's get these parts ordered and wait for them to arrive. So most of the parts for this setup have arrived. I've got the 100 watt solar panel. I've also got the MPPT charge controller, and I've got a large battery. This is a caravan battery, or often called a leisure battery. I've got it because it's cheap and I just need to save a bit of cost whilst I'm giving this system a test. In the future I'll probably move to a lithium based battery. Now, because this isn't an unboxing channel, I'm not going to go through everything unboxing in detail, but let's just get this panel out and see what it looks like. Tell you what, it's getting a bit late now. It's about 5 o'clock in the evening, but maybe I can just wire everything up temporarily to see if we can get this thing producing some power. The wiring of the system is really simple. It's just 2 wires between the solar charge controller and the battery, then another 2 wires between the charge controller and the solar panel. Make sure if you build your own system that you always connect the battery to the controller first, and for this first test I haven't added a fuse, which I'll show later. Within a few minutes of wiring it up, the sun decided to show itself, and the panel was outputting power. As the voltage of the battery is around 12.5 volts, the panel is outputting roughly 65 watts with direct sunlight, which isn't bad considering it's the evening. However, I decided to do a quick test by covering just one cell of the panel with the shadow of my hand, and well, it halves the power output. So I need to be careful where I mount the panel so it isn't covered by even the tiniest bit of shade. The following day I began installing the system into my shed by first connecting the power wires through to the inside. Then positioning the battery and charge controller in a clear space below my workbench before wiring it all back up again. Though this time I added a circuit breaker fuse. Now, in terms of mounting the panel, the obvious choice would be to mount it on the roof of the shed. But there is a slight issue. From this time-lapse footage you can see that for most of the day it's covered by shade, but just a few meters from the shed there is direct sunlight. So I'm thinking about mounting the solar panel on a movable trolley. I had some bits of wood laying around and some caster wheels, which when assembled made for a handy solar panel mount. Then I can leave the panel in a set position for the morning sun and move it throughout the day when I'm passing by the shed. It's still in the shade for a few hours of the day, but it's still far better than being on the roof of the shed. Plus, I can monitor it using a wireless security camera I recently installed, and move it accordingly. Speaking of security, this video is sponsored by NordVPN. A VPN is a virtual private network that is used to encrypt users' internet traffic, as well as mask their online identity by hiding their IP address. This security camera is connected to my phone via my home Wi-Fi IP address, and if I were to access it via a public network, like in an airport or a cafe, it could be accessible by unwanted hackers. Plus, 87% of people admit to logging into personal information such as emails, bank accounts and other financial information using public networks. NordVPN works by routing your data via their servers. This adds encryption, which means that no one can view this data other than yourself, not even your internet service provider. NordVPN is available on laptops and smartphones via their app, so why take the risk? So go to nordvpn/Tom Stanton to get 75% off a 3-year subscription, which works out at just $2.99 per month. And using the promo code Tom Stanton, you can get an extra month for free. The Chrome extension is really easy to install, and with a 30-day money-back guarantee, it's essentially risk-free. So thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring this project, and go check out the link in the description below if you want to see more about NordVPN. So the solar system is all up and running. I have the solar panel mounted out there in the sun when the sun comes out, and the solar charge controller is successfully charging the large lead acid battery. Now this battery runs at 12 volts, and fortunately my electric bike charger can take a 12 volt input, so I simply connect the two together and it's all ready to charge the large electric bike batteries. Now for a conventional store-bought electric bike, you'll most likely need a mains AC socket, so you'll need to have some kind of inverter to change your 12 volts into the mains high voltage AC outlet. Now there are a few issues I don't like with this charge controller. It doesn't really give you that much information. It gives you the amp hours charged into the battery, the voltage of the solar panel, the amps produced by the solar panel, and a few other different things like temperature and stuff. But it doesn't give you the watts produced by the solar panel and also the watt hours charged into the battery. So what I want to do is I want to build my own Arduino based solar logger where I can log the current, the voltage, and also calculate the watts and the watt hours from that. Have a small display mounted on the wall, and also have it log all of that data to an SD card, an SD memory card, so that I can log it over a period of months or years and see how much solar energy this single solar panel produces. These are the components that will be used in the solar logger. Starting with the sensor module, there is a 50 amp current sensor, a voltage divider for measuring the voltage up to 25 volts, and a 5 volt regulator to power the current sensor and other electronics. In the other module, there is a 20 by 4 character LCD screen, which I can program to display all the necessary data. Below the LCD is a TINSI 3.6 board, which will run my custom Arduino code, and also has an SD memory card slot to log the data to. And finally, a switch on the side which can be programmed to do anything I wish. Once everything was soldered up and mounted in their cases, it was time to wire it into the solar system. I decided to wire it between the charge controller and the storage battery, as this will give me the most useful information. I'm not really interested in how much energy the solar panel itself produces, but more the energy actually charged into the storage battery. This way, if I monitor the energy going into the battery, as well as what I use, the system should stay stable, and I won't need to worry about over discharging the battery. I then needed to figure out what information I'd like on the LCD screen. To do this, I find it best to open an Excel spreadsheet and mark out a 20 by 4 grid. Then I can experiment with different character positions until I find a layout that I like. Then comes a long task of programming everything, which I won't go into detail about, but I'll post a link to the code in the description below if you want to replicate this logger. I'd recommend you have experience with electronics and coding before attempting to build one, as it's not exactly plug and play. Once the code was working, I used the voltage and amp readings from the solar charge controller to calibrate the logger. And now we have all the measurements we need. So let's run through the basics of the logger. There are the volts, amps and watts being displayed at the top. Then the second row displays the energy charged in watt hours, and this value can be reset using the push button on the side. The idea behind this is by measuring the watt hours required to charge my bike, say 300 watt hours, I can then press the button and reset this value. Then when the value is back up to 300 watt hours, I can charge my bike again. The third row displays the total energy charged since I programmed it, and this is also logged to the memory card every hour, as well as the following row, which is just the current time and date. So I've had the data logger running for 5 days now, and it's been a good few 5 days in terms of weather conditions. There's been at least one day where the sun was out all day, it was blue sky all day, and there's been at least one day where there was overcast, thick cloud for the whole day. The other days were mixed patchy clouds where the sun would come out for a couple hours, but this should give us a few good results in terms of how many watt hours the solar panel is producing. So to view the data, all I need to do is take the memory card out of the logger and plug this into my computer. The data logger saves all the data into a text file which can be imported into an Excel spreadsheet, and I can produce any graph I'd like. So here is a graph of the last 5 days. As you can see, the first day had some sun in the morning, but patchy clouds in the afternoon. The second day was thick cloud all day. The third day had some cloud in the morning, but some sun in the afternoon. The fourth day was blue skies all day, but the dip in the middle was due to a few hours of shade from the nearby trees. And finally the fifth day, where there was some sun in the morning and some cloud in the afternoon. So we've got a diverse set of data logs here. Over the 5 days, the total watt hours charged was 1,572 watt hours, or 1.57 kilowatt hours. So to interpret this data, we need to look at the results from a few different angles. First, is it viable to charge an electric bike via a small-scale solar setup like this? Second, what is the payback period, and am I going to save money? And third, if any of the two previous points aren't feasible, then where could this system be of use? My electric bike is a homemade setup and can output 3.5 kilowatts of power, which isn't really relevant if you own a store-bought 250 watt pedal assist electric bike, which is the legal limit here in the UK. But fortunately, Bosch have an e-bike range calculator. I'm not sure how accurate this calculator is in terms of real-world numbers, but it should give a rough estimate. If I pick the PowerTube 625 battery, which is the closest to my homemade battery, I know that I can discharge 400 watt hours out of the total 625 watt hours. Then by choosing a mountain bike with off-road tyres and a bumpy road surface, with the motor set to turbo mode as a worst case scenario, we can get an estimated range of 25 miles, which actually isn't far off my electric bike range when riding at the same speed. Now, the day of full blue skies managed to charge 511 watt hours, while still experiencing a few hours of shade due to the trees. So that would fully charge the largest single electric bike battery that Bosch sells, or equivalent to 25 miles of cycling as a minimum. And even on a cloudy day, the panel charged a total of 145 watt hours, which would be equivalent to cycling 9 miles. So to answer the question, is this solar setup with this single 100 watt panel feasible for charging electric bikes? And I would have to say yes. The fact that this can charge on a cloudy day roughly 9 miles of range is quite good, and on a sunny day to charge 25 miles of range plus is really impressive. But is this system cost effective, and will it ever be repaid off? And in short, no. The problem is with these systems, these small scale systems, is that any small extra cost really increases the repayment time. At the beginning of the video, I mentioned I went for a bit of an overkill charge controller. This charge controller can take up to 5 of these panels, so having just one panel is, well, it's basically never going to repay this thing off. In fact, I've done some maths here, and if you were to add up the cost of everything in this system, not including the data logger because it's not really necessary, you can get by with just the data on this screen. This system cost me 327 British pounds. I'll put the US dollar value right here with the current exchange rate. And the current average cost per kilowatt hour here in the UK is 0.125 British pounds. This means I'll need to generate 2,616 kilowatt hours to pay it off, which in terms of how long that will take, it's the equivalent to 14 years of pure sunlight. So basically there's no more clouds in the sky for the next 14 years, or it's equivalent to 49 years of overcast clouds. So if you were to say somewhere in the middle, like probably 35 years I reckon here with the British weather it would take to pay this off. Now this is not really comparable to a household system because the ratio of the cost of the charge controller to the whole system probably wouldn't be as great. And if I were to expand the system to have 5 panels, I would pay it off a lot quicker. In fact, if I were to have 5 panels, it would pay itself off in just under 6 years of 100% sunlight, so no cloud for 6 years, or just under 20 years of cloud. So if you were to say somewhere in the middle, 10 to 12 years it would probably take to pay the system off, which is not far off a household system. I think they're averaging about 8 to 10 years depending on the location. So if we ignore the cost and the repayment time of this solar system, where is a system like this beneficial? Well, many people online use them for caravans, motorhomes, and for you Americans, RVs. Basically anything that's not always linked to the grid. It's also useful for if you want to install lighting in a shed similar to this. If this shed wasn't linked to the mains, it's actually quite far from the nearest house, so it probably would have been cheaper for me to install this solar setup if I just wanted lighting than to have an electrician pop round and dig a trench and put the wires in like they have actually done. Now, in terms of powering a workshop, like my CNC machine and my 3D printer, it might struggle. Maybe with 5 panels I might be able to do a few short 3D prints, but it's not going to power everything for a long period of time. If you're interested in building your own solar setup similar to this, I actually recommend that you go check out another YouTube channel run by a guy called Will Prowse. I'll put his channel link in the description down below, but essentially he goes through these kind of setups in far more detail because he's experimented with all sorts of different panels, charge controllers and storage batteries. So if you want to find out how you can wire up your own system and what equipment to buy, go check out his channel down in the description below. So that does it for this project. I hope this was of interest to you. It was a good learning experience for me because, well, everyone knows what a solar panel is, but not everyone has experimented with applying solar power to some kind of application like charging electric bikes. So if you enjoyed this video or found it interesting, it'd be great if you could leave a thumbs up down below and also click subscribe down below. A huge thanks to all of my Patreon supporters over on patreon.com for making these projects possible. Your support really helps my videos out, so thanks once again for your support. Thanks once again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.